Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
I think it is the biggest scandal of my lifetime. There is a major development in the January 6th pipe bomber investigation. Blaze News has the exclusive. Its lead suspect is at the highest levels of government. And Steve joins me now. How long have you been working on this story?
I've been pulling the threads on this for exactly 4 years.
If anybody ever wondered why they made such a big deal out of arresting Steve, this is why.
I was so shocked by what I saw, I immediately took it to a source in one of the most important, highest level investigative federal agencies in the country. And I said, you have to see this. After they looked at it for about 2 hours, the response that I got back was, holy F, she's one of us.
And when you find out the position, this now will implicate so many people at the highest levels. What's your confidence level in this story?
I can give you forensic estimates, the analysis of the hoodied bomber on the evening of November 5th compared to the gait analysis of this individual in private life and at work. The actual software hit at a 94% accuracy. Then human analysis from the experts in intelligence is much higher. They've looked at it and went, my God, that's it. You've got it.
In a world not gone mad, this would be a best-selling book and a major blockbuster movie. When it all comes out, this is going to involve everybody. I mean, this is really bad. Really, really bad. This apparently just has to be done right because of national security, I'm gathering. Is that right?
That's correct.
And so they've got to take care of things they've got to take care of. Then the story will be released.
Good afternoon, America. It's Whistleblower Wednesday on the Rob Maness Show, and we're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. And yes, we're still talking about the secrets of the January 6th pipe bomber. You just saw some info about the Blaze's hard-hitting investigation into one of the most suspicious loose ends from January 6th, the so-called pipe bombs planted the night before at the DNC and the RNC headquarters. For 5 years, the FBI insisted these were live, viable explosives, deadly devices that could have killed dozens, yet they sat undetected for nearly 18 hours, while Secret Service agents, K-9 units, pedestrians, and even Vice President-elect Kamala Harris's motorcade rolled within just a few feet of the one at the DNC. No urgency, no blast perimeter, no real evacuation, just casual milling around like it was a prop, not a threat. And then late last year, the FBI announced they'd solved it after what you just saw there, Glenn Beck talking to Blaze independent reporter and journalist Steve Baker there about his investigation. That was in November. Okay, so as soon as this goes public from the Blaze, all of a sudden the FBI announced they've solved it. Brian Cole Jr., a 30-year-old autistic man from Virginia, allegedly confessed without a lawyer, claiming he parked near Folger Park and planted these devices. But the story is falling apart and fast. A 20-year ATF explosives veteran filed a report in Cole's defense. The powder inside wasn't properly mixed black powder, mostly large white chunks that couldn't detonate. The igniter, a single 9-volt battery, and steel wool incapable of setting off real explosives. New video analysis shows Cole's blue Nissan Sentra more than a mile away, a 6-minute drive at the precise moment that the hooded suspect was supposedly retrieving the second device from the park. And the Keystone Kops' response on J6? If these were real bombs, it was criminal negligence. Well, my guest today has been leading this charge, exposing these contradictions and more, and still is. Investigative journalist Steve Baker from The Blaze. Steve, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, sir. Let's uncover the truth, or at least try, anyway.
Thanks for having me back, Colonel. I appreciate it.
As you know, I reached out to you pretty quickly after you guys broke your story, and I'm like, okay, I'm just kind of waiting on this to see what the other shoe is going to be. And then the other shoe is the FBI. All of a sudden, we solved it. Come on, man. I just have to ask you for the record for the audiences, what's the biggest red flag of this whole incident that still leads you down the path to want to keep digging into this pipe bomb story?
There actually is no one biggest red flag. That's the problem. And myself and my partner, Joe Hanneman at The Blaze, we have been doing a series. Parts 1 and 2 are already out of all of the inconvenient truths and facts and contradictions, lies and misrepresentations related to the January 6th pipe bomber. And it's a lot of information. I mean, it's a long read. This is not pap. This is not, summer reading on the beach of, some romance novel or something like that. This is serious information, and I encourage everybody to go to theblaze.com and find that. You can look up my name or Joe's name and find the two-part series that is right now. Part 3 is in the works about this. And as I said, it is just one circumstance after another. And then when you combine them all, then it is a gigantic red flag. And it begins at the very beginning. I mean, when we first got information released to the public from the FBI, and they released, just a few seconds of the video, the blurry, almost like cartoon stop action, black and white video of the hooded pipe bomber walking around the DNC and the RNC on the night of January 5th. And then immediately a lot of analysts dove into that. Some very credible analysts dove into that and began to see and realize and calculate that what was released to the public was stop action, frame reduced, from whether it was 30 frames or 10 frames reduced down to 1 frame per second. And why would the FBI do that? And why would they release such a limited amount of information? I think the FBI may have released 1 minute total of the hooded pipe bomber up to this point, but they claim that they have 30,000. I said 30,000 pieces of video evidence related to that.
Oh. Wow.
That sounds like more than 1 minute. I can tell you that we have harvested every single moment that the pipe bomber is on Capitol CCTV camera, and that's a little over 22 minutes. And the hooded bomber is not always on camera. There are blind spots, but when the bomber moves in and out of those cameras, we pick them back up again. But the bomber appeared on camera for the first time at 7:24 p.m. on the 5th, and then exited from view at, I think it was 8:18 p.m. And that was with a couple of blind spots and gaps. The longest one being an 8-minute gap, where even the FBI concedes and asserts actually that the bomber reloaded, that the bomber was only carrying one device at a time, and then disappeared into Folger Park, where there's no Capitol CCTV coverage, to reload the backpack with the second device.
That doesn't make any sense.
No, and I will tell you now that I've been rambling for just a couple of minutes here, when we examine this closely, and you ask me what's the biggest red flag, the biggest red flag about the arrest of Brian Cole Jr. as the alleged pipe bomber is they are asserting that this young man, autistic, highly OCD, very, very much a creature of habit. I have interviewed neighbors. I have interviewed the 7-Eleven store owner, where he went every single day of his life for 13 years to buy 2 Cokes and a pizza every day. 13 years. This is like, Rain Man level stuff, 5 minutes to
Right.
Wapner. And so they're going to assert that this young man knew exactly where those blind spots were in Capitol CCTV camera coverage so that he could park his car in one of those blind spots, not be seen until blocks away, and emerge suddenly into Capitol CCTV video coverage at 7:24, and then know exactly when to exit coverage to retrieve the second device, then re-enters coverage, plants the second device, and then mysteriously somehow this kid knows where in the alleyway behind the RNC and the Capitol Hill Club that there's a hidden gate, there's a fence with a hidden gate. And when I say it's hidden, it's hidden. I've been there. I've videoed it. I've taken photographs of this gate. You can't even find the latch in the gate. Yet this young man allegedly told the FBI that he learned the route and figured out his routing for the distribution of the 2 pipe bombs from just going to Google Maps. Well, there's no way that Google Maps or even, Google Street View would have shown this hidden gate with a hidden latch in it. I've walked through that gate twice myself. The first time, and the only reason I found that gate the first time, this is where the individual disappears into the night, and we never see the bomber again. Is that the only reason I knew and could find the gate location? I knew that it existed because I had been told that from a congressional source. But the only reason I found it was because at the time there was snow on the ground. My first time to go back there and examine this area. So because there was snow, and the residents and the locals who use that and move in and out of that area would know where this gate was, and so you could see the footprints in the snow going to this hidden. It's like they disappear into this gate. You go over there and you examine it, and you find, and you look in between the slats, and you can find the hidden latch, and then it opens into a church garden on the other side. And so the second time that I went through that gate, there was no snow on the ground. It was dry, and unless I had already previously been there, I wouldn't have been able to even know where that gate was. And in fact, when you open it, and I went through it at night, and when you open it from the alley side and then step through it into the church garden, it actually it dumps you into a bush. There's not even a trail there. There's no visible signs of this gate existing. And to assert that this young man knew all about that, it strains credulity, as they say.
Yeah, I'm a member of the Capitol Hill Club, and when I first joined, the manager gave me a tour, and we went out the back door down the first floor hallway. I think, if I remember right, it opens out into this area, and he never showed me a gate. So it's not like, and he would show you, this guy, if he thought it was important and used, he would probably have shown me that. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
No, it's kind of like it's hidden knowledge, and not hidden, but it's local knowledge. It's just one of those things. Yeah, that they don't want people they don't want people traipsing through the church garden. But it is an exit point that if you find it more convenient to come, because for some people that live there, they park their cars in the back. They've got their back doors to their homes. There's a couple of apartment buildings in that area. And so if you're wanting to go out to a different street and you want to take a shortcut to get there, you just need to know that gate exists. And there's no way that he would have known that from Google Maps or any other source unless there was pre-planning and instruction. And advice.
Absolutely. All right, we got to take a break, Steve. When we come back, I want to get your take on this. The question that I have is, did we really get the pipe bomber, this Brian Cole guy? Steve has investigated this more than anybody that I know. So I want to get his take on that based on what he has seen in his investigation versus what the FBI is telling us about him. We'll be right back with Steve Baker of The Blaze.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
Person, and one of the biggest people they should have been trying to find, which is the person who laid a pipe bomb, which was a viable pipe bomb, we've learned. So did they misplace their priorities and the time and the attention away from, bigger issues and real things to go after, grandmother and grandfather? Also, House Republicans put out a report in early 2025 laying out some of the issues with the way that investigators approached the pipe bomb investigation, not securing the perimeter, a variety of issues that took place there. So obviously we have a lot of questions. We need answers. This is a great day to get this individual, but we've got a lot to learn.
Those are important questions, especially in the culture that we're in, that is including the assassination and assassination attempts, and I should say more than one assassination. That National Guardsman, Becky. Sarah Beckstrom. So as we look at this, we know that pipe bombs were planted outside both the RNC and DNC.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and my guest is investigative journalist Steve Baker from The Blaze. He's been investigating this. I mean, we're 5 years on now, in addition to all the other work that he's done around January 6th and other investigations and reporting and those kind of things. And Steve, there is just so much stuff. You heard in that clip there, and I think another clip's going to say it too, these were definitely viable devices. And my opinion has been for a long time that they surely don't look like they're viable and everything. And now we have this kid, this 30-year-old autistic guy, and he's the guy. We have him dead to rights. He confessed. But your investigation, your initial one that you did for years, the facts that you found, uncovered, and investigated with scientific technology, with common sense, with eyewitnesses, didn't lead in this direction at all, which led to whoever your source was in that federal investigative service saying, this is one of us. When you presented the information to them, I mean, how do we square that? Have you figured out how to square that yet in your own mind? I mean, you're probably the most knowledgeable person of the known facts that are out in the public.
I have to, unfortunately, defer part of that question to the Blaze Media legal department. That's all I can say about that right now. And there is plenty, let's just say this, there is so much exculpatory evidence related to Brian Cole Jr. that makes him a very obvious scapegoat, patsy, fall guy, however you want to put it. I had an FBI whistleblower, not one of the suspendables, none of the scary guys that people love to hate nowadays, Kyle Seraphin and Steve Friend and
right.
the, as they call themselves, the suspendables. But this is a brand new whistleblower that came forward. He's not one of the suspendables. And he actually filed a whistleblowing protective disclosure with Congress. He has filed a couple of them now. He filed his first one with Barry Loudermilk, the chairman of the J6 Select subcommittee that's investigating everything related to January 6th. He filed it with Thomas Massey, and he filed his second one also with that would be Jim Jordan, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the House. And so I have spent face-to-face an hour in his presence with this particular unnamed FBI whistleblower, current FBI employee. And this individual told me, he said the reason why he was compelled to come forward is because in the early days after January 6th, when they were first deployed, and that was when I say they, that was his SOG group, Special Operations Group, which was a counter surveillance team. And when his counter surveillance team was deployed at a location in Falls Church, Virginia, to take up and watch a particular condo residence there, that one of the things that they were told immediately was that the bombs were not viable, because they needed to know that. They needed to know because that affects their tactical position and their stance and their preparations if they're going after somebody who might have explosive materials inside their residence.
Right.
They were informed by their own leadership at the FBI, but no, these were not viable devices. They were inert. And so that is one of the first things that we learned. And then, of course, we learned that, once again, years ago from Kyle Seraphin, because he was also on that exact same SOG team. He was on that team. And then when the FBI started the process of rolling out this, this scapegoat, this patsy, Brian Cole, one of the things that they did is they started a disinformation campaign, and one of their spokespeople started telling people in D.C., including the White House, and lying and saying that Kyle Seraphin wasn't even on that team. Flat out lie. Now, how do I know that? Well, because, look, the White House is full of sources and leakers, and we know that that was the information that was being given to them by the FBI spokesperson, filling them in and informing them about this investigation. And they flat out lied about that. Well, the new guy, the new whistleblower, who's not part of Kyle's group, corroborated every single thing that we learned from Kyle 3 years ago about that surveillance unit. The second thing that he corroborated, and what really set him off and brought him to the point of being a whistleblower, is that they were only put on that address for 2 days. Now, just hang with me here for a second. I promise I won't bore anybody beyond, limit. But they were deployed with their counter surveillance team on January 12th, so 6 days after January 6th, because one of those residents, the residents that they were looking at, was the resident of what the FBI had identified as person of interest number 3. Person of interest number 3 also had been hosting at his residence on January 5th and 6th. Person of interest number 2. So have 2 POIs at the same address. They put them on the surveillance on the 12th. They pulled them on the 13th and sent them back to headquarters and field office to take phone calls. Pulled them off of the residence. And what angered this particular whistleblower is that they did not clear, the FBI did not clear person of interest 2 or 3 until 6 days after the 13th, on January 19th, before they even interviewed those 2 individuals. Now, I have personally met with both of them. I've spent 5 hours. We've never named either one. I spent 5 hours with person of interest number 2. And I know exactly why he was suspected, or at least a person of interest. And I would say that after 5 hours face to face with him, a 3-hour session, and then a follow-up session the next day, 2 hours, I would say that if I was the judge, jury, and executioner, I would probably clear him. I would say that about POI 2. But there's still questions out there about him and where he was and why he was there and what he was doing on the 5th in particular that are still unanswered questions and are steeped in high degrees of improbable behavior.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And none of this townhouse, just to be clear, folks, this townhouse, these persons of interest had anything to do with Brian Cole.
Nothing.
Or his parents' house,
No.
or anything. Do we know any more about POI 3 and how he was cleared?
POI 3 was cleared by a phone call interview. Now, this was the residence. He received a phone call from an FBI agent posing as a transit authority cop. Because POI 3, it was his Metro card that was used by POI 2 to go into the Capitol on the 5th and the 6th from Falls Church and attend the events and rallies that were going on there those 2 days. And because of that, they had one of the agents pretend that he was a transit authority cop and make that call. And it was a very short call, and they cleared him on the 19th. They had POI 2 was visit. He does not live in Virginia. He's out of state. And from his residence in another state, 2 FBI agents showed up at his residence on the 19th. How do I know it's the 19th? Because I actually have the screenshots of the messages he got from the FBI as they were outside of his door texting him saying, hey, we're outside. We want to talk to you. I have screenshots of it, so I know it was the 19th. So they certainly had not even interviewed him yet, but they had cleared both of them 6 days, not 6 days after they pulled the counter surveillance team, which is incomprehensible. You're talking about the most serious crime of January 6th, the placement of weapons of mass destruction, including a possible assassination attempt of then Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, who was inside the DNC that day. And they pulled the surveillance teams and put them on the phone back at headquarters.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. It does it to the brain in here that's an old EOD tech and supervised law enforcement, has had his own investigative and intel shops working for him from this perspective. None of that makes any sense to me, along with thousands of other things that don't make sense to me, that you would pull your surveillance before you clear somebody on something that magnitude. And the utter silence about the attempted assassination attempt on Kamala Harris by at least the Democrat politicians that are in office is more than puzzling. It's troubling. I don't understand it. If Donald Trump had been at the RNC or at the Capitol Hill Club that day, we would be calling that an attempted assassination attempt at the RNC headquarters. And it just absolutely makes zero sense, Steve. None of this does. That's why I want to do the show again. We've done this show a couple of times over the years, actually, as you've discovered things. We got to take another break here in about a minute. But you've done a long form interview with Congressman Tom Massey, who I think is probably the elected official that has the most level of detail in his mind and has looked at the most things on this. So I'm curious after the break, get your take on him. I didn't want to use any clips from your interview of him here because I want people to go watch it. I watched it, but I want to give you the opportunity to speak to what you learned from him. And again, let's go back to this device and this Brian Cole guy that's the accused here, and continue to talk about him because none of this makes any sense. We're talking with Steve Baker, January 6th pipe bomber. The mystery continues.
We have a big announcement, folks. It's called Bella Melt. In the first week, you lost 3 pounds on this, right?
That is correct.
Your GLP-1 is a natural hormone that's in every single one of our bodies. And your GLP-1 lets you know if you're full. It's a satiety hormone. So when your GLP is working properly, it does help suppress your appetite as well as reduce those cravings. So what it's going to do best is it's going to reduce your sugar cravings or any other cravings you have in your body. It's going to suppress that appetite. But where Melissa got the most benefit, I think, over the last week was the L-carnitine. The L-carnitine tells your mitochondria, this is where you make, we talked about it before, this is where you produce energy in your cells. It actually tells those mitochondria to burn fat for fuel.
MelissaHouseBG.com just now introducing for the first time Bella Melt with GLP-1 fast action.
New York Post reporting that this suspect, Brian Cole, had possible anarchist leanings. I have other contacts that spoke with people that lived in the neighborhood, that knew him. Any evidence at this point that you can tell us, any anti-ICE sentiment, any anti-police sentiment, any radicalization or evidence of radicalization that you and the team, to quote you, are finding and that you're seeing at this point?
Well, the assistant director in charge of the Washington field office is an absolute manhunter. Darren, you saw him at the press conference today. In just the last couple of months, he's had to deal with the tragic National Guard shooting, Washington's Safe Streets program. He's been dealing with this case and other public interest cases as well. I say that because this was a lengthy investigation. This did not just happen yesterday. We've been doing this for a while. As legal process starts to come out and filter out into the public space, you may see some more stuff tomorrow. I don't want to get ahead of it, but you'll see more. And I want to be very clear with the public. This is chapter 1 of a 10-20 chapter book. This investigation is not over at all. The investigation has just begun. We've interviewed the subject at length. We are still going through an enormous amount of process, accounts. So it would be very early for me to get out ahead of that on motive. I mean, obviously the motive was to drop a couple bombs and that could have killed people. But what the actual ideology and motivation, I want to be cautious that this gets done correctly, and sometimes smooth is fast.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. And yes, we are still talking about the mysteries of the January 6th Pike bomber, and investigative journalist Steve Baker of The Blaze is here with me today to talk about the latest series that he and his colleague Joe Hannity are writing about the story still today. And the reason that's happening, folks, let's just be very clear here, is there are still hundreds, if not thousands, of questions and holes in the stories. And quite honestly, there's no reason to not release every bit of information to fill those holes because it probably does exist in the government holdings of this information. And Steve, one of the things, I think I watched 15 interviews of Dan in different venues as I was prepping for this show, and what you just heard there is in every single one of them. Right. So it's my understanding that the FBI did not get any new information. This was a reviewing of information that they had from the beginning of the investigation when they collected information that had this revelation of Brian Cole is the perpetrator in it. Is that accurate?
Well, that's what the FBI has told us. That, as a matter of fact, what they did is they brought in a quote-unquote red team of outside investigators. Don't know who those investigators are, if they came from the private sector or if they were from other agencies, HSI, CIA, who knows where they came from. But nevertheless, as a result of their re-look at 5-year-old evidence is they say that's what led them to Brian Cole. And of course, then you have the 4-hour interview that he references. We have interviewed, the suspect or the subject. And of course, in that interview, after 2 hours of putting information into this autistic young man's head, they take a 20-minute break. Brian Cole puts his head down on the table. They come back in, sit down, and he raises his head up and he starts confessing to the crime. And it's an interesting thing that happened because, as it happens, the highest demographic of individuals who offer up false confessions in these interrogations are autistic individuals. Books written about it. This is not unknown in the forensic and crime and law enforcement world. So this is something that is known, and this is exactly what happened with this young man. And I believe that his legal team, in addition to the work that we're continuing to do, is going to show that and tear that apart.
Well, I would think they would. I mean, the way you just described it is pretty common amongst false confessions, and I'm not saying that it's confirmed. That I'm just, this is a discussion show to try to get the facts out. If they spent 2 hours with him, knowing the type of individual he is and the way his brain works, that's like probably spending a day with somebody else, feeding them information through their questioning and everything. And that invariably has led to many, many, many false confessions that have been thrown out. Some that have even been allowed that have resulted in bad convictions and those kind of things. So it really raises my concern.
When you're a 5 minutes to Wapner kind of guy, all right, and you're obsessed with that, doing your normal routine at the right time, and for no telling how many, understand, we don't know how many hours after his arrest and being yanked out of his home that this interrogation took place. Right. But during this entire time, he's now missing all of the key touch points of his daily routine. He didn't get his walk in with his dog. He didn't get his walk up to the 7-Eleven at the front of his neighborhood, where the owner of that 7-Eleven franchise told me himself, no way is he the bomber. I've seen him every day for 13 years. He comes in, he always has his headphones on. He never interacts with anybody. He said in 13 years, he may have only spoken to me 3 words in 13 years. What he does, he comes in, he goes to the cooler, he gets 2 Coca-Colas, and he gets a pizza. And the 7-Eleven guy did tell me, he said, on the days where I don't have a fresh pizza available, he'll get the wings instead. But that's his routine. And he said, because I know that pizza is his preference, he said, I've always offered to make him a fresh pizza, but he doesn't wait on it. He refuses that because that upsets the next part of his routine. Yeah. And you couldn't see it. You couldn't see it from the mugshot because on that Fox News because of the lower third, the cryon there. But they allowed Cole to wear his headphones around his neck in his mugshot. Now, when have you ever seen that ever before in your life in a mugshot?
Never. I have never seen anything like that.
Never.
That's amazing. Here's another question that I have, and I've read a lot of stuff about this, and that is the timeline of the evidence that the government says they have that has been revealed. Some of it has, anyway, to the public. Of this purchasing the materials to build the devices. I mean, this timeline doesn't really logically match up to this event on this day in the context that this day was, the 5th and 6th of January were happening with the 2020 election and all that, does it?
No, it doesn't, and of course, it again. This is something else that begs credulity when you're talking about building a case and a motive for these bombs. And variously, he's been accused of being a Trump supporter. Variously, he's been accused of or claimed to be a Trump voter. He's also been said to be apolitical and that he hates all parties. He's also it's been said that in his interrogation that he admitted that he was inspired by the Irish Troubles. Young black autistic guy from Northern Virginia was inspired by the Irish Troubles in taking this action. And then when you start putting all this together with his purchase history, the purchase history began in 2018. January 6th was 2021.
Yeah.
So it had nothing to do with the vote, this purchase history of these items. These items also, by the way, are in millions of people. There are millions of people and men in this country in their garages and in their workshops and in their work vans have these identical components. Millions, all of them. He purchased them at different times over the course of several years, and many of the major items that he needed to pull this off on January 5th and 6th were not purchased till after January 6th.
Makes no sense. How many times have I said that during the show? That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Did he, I guess he used a credit card? Is that the guy at the 7-Eleven? Does he talk about him using a credit card or a debit card, or does he use cash?
I didn't ask the 7-Eleven guy about whether he paid for cash or with credit card, but we know that he had at least 6 credit cards in his name. Now,
okay,
I don't want to get into a lot of other things that we know, but he is a junior, Brian Cole Jr. Brian Cole Sr. has had his own legal problems. He's a bail bondsman, and he's also, we know, because we've looked into, we've done backgrounds on all the family members related to the various characters, involved in this. It's the thing you have to do. It's what the FBI does. And they know about his financial issues, and they also know, they should know, the FBI should know, because we know that the father may or may not have used his son's name to acquire financial instruments. We'll just say that. May or may not have.
Interesting. Any truth to the kind of loose reporting that I heard early on about Cole Sr., that his bail bondsman shop catered to like Antifa types, BLM types, or something like that?
I mean,
anything like that?
You could make. I mean, look, if you have, how it is in the social media world. If you have one intersection with an unsavory character, you're guilty by association. You get one picture with somebody. Look at the Epstein files itself. You're at some party in New York City, in Manhattan, and you end up in a photo with Epstein. That doesn't mean that you were ever on the Lolita Express or his island, or that you were doing business with him, or you were raping young women just because you happened to be in the same room at the same time. But nevertheless, that I wouldn't go so far as to even looking at that right now.
Yeah. It's interesting. I go back to my original story about my wife stopped me from taking my bag to the pickup truck on January 4th to come up there because I had been invited by a friend to be at the president's speech at the Ellipse. And my phone would have been trapped in that geofencing that was done that ended up convicting a lot of January 6 people in one way or another, or destroying their lives just by being investigated and accused. Very similar to the Epstein file issue. This right here. We got to take another break here in a second, Steve, but I want to talk about the device and a little bit more about his legal team. I have found one clip from one of his attorneys that will play coming back into the segment. But the device itself, the Blaze, Steve's colleagues done a great report on the device itself and what this Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms former agent, 20-year career agent, wrote about it on behalf of the defense of Brian Cole Jr. about the device itself. And I still think I'm right. If it's not a training device, it's at a minimum not a viable device. And we need to get to the bottom of that, because there's a vast difference in the crime if it's a viable device or a non-viable device, because you have two different sets of circumstances and intent there. So I'll be right back with Steve Baker of The Blaze. Yes, we are still talking about the mysteries of the January 6th pipe bomber.
What if millions around the world could access Bible teaching and worldview training for free right now without hitting a paywall? That's exactly what happens every day at worldviewtube.com because of the Worldview Weekend Foundation. We don't lock our live stream behind PayPal. We don't restrict our content to members only. Instead, the Worldview Weekend Foundation helps cover the cost of delivering free educational and ministry programming to people across the nation and around the world. And it's not just programming. My Sunday night church service, where I taught verse by verse through Revelation for 18 months, and now I am teaching through the book of Daniel, is made possible through the support of our church, Worldview Weekend Foundation. If you believe this kind of truth-centered biblical teaching must continue, donate today. Go now to worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address and phone number there if you'd rather give by phone or mail. That's worldviewfoundation.com. Thank you.
Fox 5 exclusive. For the first time, we are hearing from the lawyers representing accused pipe bomber Brian Cole Jr.
It was a wide-ranging interview today with our Katie Barlow, who's here now with the latest on this one. Katie.
Cole's lawyer, Mario Williams, says Cole voted for Trump twice before he was arrested and charged with interstate transportation of explosive devices and a malicious attempt to use explosive devices. And he was arrested back in December. He's now pleaded not guilty to both charges. Williams also says he believes the president's pardon for all January 6 defendants applies to Cole. The lawyers are planning to make a filing with the court soon, laying out that argument that the pardon applies.
Judge called this a January 6th adjacent case during the hearing. Do you agree with that?
For purposes of the pardon, I absolutely agree with it.
What do you mean?
So I think you have to employ some kind of common sense as applied to the allegations. So if the allegations are that he went out there and he set down these components, and that they were found on January 6th. The judge says that it's a part of January 6th. The pardon says that you're allowed to get a pardon for everything related to the events that occurred on or at the Capitol on January 6th. Like I said, we're going to talk about that at a later date, but I do believe that.
Sounds like you believe it's a strong argument he should get pardoned.
100%.
Of Trump's pardon is broad. It says the president will grant a full, complete, and unconditional pardon to all other individuals convicted of offenses related to events that occurred at or near the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021. The government says Cole confessed to making the homemade devices and walked investigators through how he built them before driving to Washington, D.C. and placing them outside the RNC and DNC headquarters the night before Congress certified Joe Biden's victory. When the government put details of what they call Cole's confession in a public filing, Cole's lawyers demanded to see the evidence of the confession. Williams says he's now watched a recording of Cole's interview after the arrest. He says the statements that are in the government's filing are missing context, and at some points, the government is making affirmative false statements, he says.
But you're not saying the government's lying.
Well, I'm saying that I believe the manner in which the government made those statements is incorrect and acontextual, and in some instances, absolutely false.
So a lie. The government's lying about what you said.
Some of the representations that the government made, in our opinion, are false.
You can see more of our conversation on fox5dc.com and this week's episode of In the Courts. Cole is due back in court on January 28th.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast with Blaze investigative journalist Steve Baker, who has been investigating this for many, many years. And Steve, I had to play that clip when I found it because it's the pardon question is very intriguing. But Mr. Cole's lawyer has a point if you're looking at the law on that. But what's more interesting to me is that he thinks the government is lying and taking things out of context in the interview that they did, and you couple that with what the ATF agent wrote about the viability of these devices, and it doesn't sound like they really have a case.
I don't think that they have a case that can be won in front of a DC jury. I don't think that a DC jury would ever convict a black autistic young man. Not with as many holes as are popping up in this particular narrative. Now, let's talk about that pardon just for a second, okay? It says related to January 6th. Okay. So what you're saying is that Brian Cole Jr. was placing those bombs with only a 1 hour timer on them, kitchen timer, on each of the devices, 17 hours before they were discovered, expecting, and you're expecting us now to believe that they're related to January 6th. That would imply that Cole was part of a conspiracy and knew that January 6th was going to happen. I didn't know it was going to happen. The FBI certainly did. We have their notes from their tabletop exercise weeks in advance that they predicted something like this could happen. The New York Police Department predicted and warned the Capitol Police that they had a you know what storm coming that day.
Yeah.
Many other intelligence agencies warned, including elements of the DOD that, or DOW now, DOD then, that there was a possible big event coming that day that was going to get out of hand. So you're going to tell me that Cole knew it was coming, and that's why he chose the time, the place. And if he knew it, and it was a part of January 6th, this is why I don't think that the pardon is going to apply, is because it has to be related. Well, if it was related, then they had to have a 24-hour timer on them or a remote detonation device, which neither device had. I want to jump to something else real quick. I want to talk about this. And this because, there's stuff that comes up in my X timeline every single day about the pipe bomb. Whether I'm posting about it or not, there's always something there.
Yeah.
And one of the most interesting aspects, and this is something that people, and I saw it today, and it's why it's on my mind. Somebody responded to one of my tweets and said, it's highly unlikely that Brian Cole Jr. would wave at the Capitol Police car as the Capitol Police car was as the bomber was walking in front of the Capitol Hill Club, and there was a Capitol Police car coming from the other direction, and it looked like that he sticks his hand up and he waves, or whoever the person is waves at the Capitol Police car. I will tell you that 2 years before this new explosion and reporting initiated by us, and this arrest by the FBI 5 years later of this young man, Brian Cole, is that I had a discussion, and this goes back to your references to Thomas Massie as being the guy, the congressman most on top of the pipe bomb issues, and in fact he is. But the reason that Thomas Massie was most on top of it is because the senior staff member that he had in the 2 years leading up to the new administration was a guy by the name of Marshall Yates. And Marshall Yates was the primary investigator looking at the pipe bomb issues and putting all of that together as a senior aide to Thomas Massey. And Marshall Yates told me himself that he believed that that was not a wave, that that was an arm stretch, and that because we've seen what other people interpret as, like pulling a bra out, but there's several other times in the 22 minutes that we have the bomber on camera that there's an apparent, shoulder thing going on. And Marshall Yates told me himself that he believed that we needed to be looking at possible suspects who were marathon runners. Because there's such a thing as marathon runner's shoulder. It's the repetitive action of millions of those arm motions back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, millions upon millions upon millions of that repetitive shoulder motion that creates that thing that this individual walking around the DNC and RNC that night was displaying. And that's why he said, I don't believe it was a wave. I think that the bomber was stretching the shoulder out at the time. And when you go back and look at it with that in mind, okay, it could be a wave, but you could also see it per his description as well. Now, by the way, the reason why Marshall Yates is no longer with Thomas Massey on his staff is because at the beginning of last year, after the January 20th inauguration of President Trump into his second term, Marshall transferred over and is now the congressional liaison to the FBI.
Oh.
So Marshall knows. Therefore, Bongino knows. Therefore, Cash knows. And, interestingly enough, there's one thing that has never happened since the arrest of Brian Cole Jr. The White House, no one at the White House, including the president, has ever congratulated Cash and Dan for the successful conclusion of this 5-year manhunt. Not one word from the president, not one tweet, not one truth from him or anyone else on his staff, anyone else in the White House have congratulated Cash and Dan for that arrest, despite the fact that the pipe bomb was named and listed in multiple of these interviews as being a top 3 priority of the administration.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think it was. I mean, the president said that on the campaign trail.
Bongino and Patel also said it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they had, I think they had clear marching orders. I don't know for sure, but it seems like they had clear marching orders from the president, at least Cash did, to get this done. Probably Dan, too. I'm sure he got interviewed and had multiple discussions with the president about this issue being among many, I'm sure. But the question that I have in my mind, and I think you're right, by the way, is the why of it. Because the why, I can't answer that question, because the why of it should be to get the American people the truth and put this to bed as best we can. But what we're seeing so far from the facts is that this is not the best we have. This is not the best. Right. This is not putting it to bed the best we can. And it's tainting everybody involved in it that's been searching for the truth. I don't care whether it's the Blaze or you or Glenn Beck or Dan Bongino or Patel or the president. It's put a taint on the situation of uncovering the truth so that we can get at holding government officials accountable that violated the rights of Americans, that violated the Constitution willfully, and we know that happened. And that's why I'm troubled by it. And I'm going to keep doing things like interviewing people like you until we fill the gaps. Before I let you go, though, we've got about a minute and a half left. What are the key things that you learned about what Congressman Massey thinks? Since we both agree he is the most knowledgeable person, I think, in elected office about this situation. Did you learn anything from him about what he's thinking post the arrest of Brian Cole?
Yeah, the most important thing to, and look, I know Massey is the most polarizing and controversial person in D.C. right now. I have, because I am a friend of the congressman, and because I am a supporter of the congressman, I have lost, just in the last week, hundreds of followers, because if you say anything positive about Massey whatsoever, you're taking that risk, and that's fine.
I lose them too.
Right. And so, but when it comes to his knowledge of the pipe bomb situation in particular, you have to look at a guy who is an MIT, got his master's as an engineer from MIT, and his primary, course of study was in probabilities. And as he told me in that interview that I did with him on this very topic, he said, he was already something on the order of 95, percent convinced about the pipe bomb situation, and that the research that we have done recently brought him to 99% and probably closer to 100 in terms of whether we have it right or not. And look, I am absolutely, I'll tell you two things that I am absolutely convinced of. Number one, Brian Cole Jr. is a patsy. He is not the bomber. His entire, the video expert, who we don't name his name, who has assisted at me a year and a half in this process, his online name is Armitage. As he said to me, he said Brian Cole's entire body is an alibi.
Yeah, that's what I think too. But I'm just an amateur.
Yeah, but the people that have looked at it that do this, we're talking about targeting analysts, senior targeting analysts from our intelligence community and the Department of War, have told us no way that Brian Cole is the person you see walking around in the hoodie that night. No way.
I'm not surprised.
These are people that rely upon the particular skill to look at terrorists walking down the road in the little desert village somewhere from 20,000 feet before they call in a drone or missile strike on them and take their lives. They have to be absolutely certain. They're looking at this and saying, no way. And then you have, I think one of the most damning things of all, and I even brought this up with my own ophthalmologist, was the fact that when we got that 48 minutes of Brian Cole in a traffic fender bender, and every single time he looks at his phone, it's like 8 inches from his face, doing this. And this is outside in the sunlight. But the bomber, the hooded bomber, the first time that person sits down at the bench at the DNC that night, holds the phone in their lap, at least 2 feet away from their eyes, at night with sunglasses on.
Things to think about, Steve. Thank you very much, man. We appreciate it. I'm sure we're going to do more of these, unfortunately, because we haven't gotten to the answers that the American people not only need, but they deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it.
And you can follow him at Steve Baker USA on X, and you should follow him. Very reliable individual. I trust him more than I trust any investigative journalist, reporter in this business today. I'll see you tomorrow on Truth Thursday.
All right.